Welcome to the TriStar Podcast, where martial arts meets family, faith, and personal growth. Join Professor Brummett and Professor Chris Bean as they share stories from the mat, lessons from life, and tools to help you and your family live like black belts on and off the mat. It's time to train the body, sharpen the mind, and strengthen the spirit right here on the TriStar Podcast. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to the TriStar Podcast. Of course, I'm Mr. Brummett, and joining me, as always, is my co-host, the man who somehow makes push-ups look like a relaxing technique, Mr. Bean. Nice to be with you, sir.
Relaxing. I think my shoulders would argue with you on that one, but yeah, I'm happy to be here. And listeners, hey, whether you're a TriStar parent, a student, or someone just trying to figure out how to keep your kids from turning the summer into a 3-month-long screen marathon, you're in the right place here today. Absolutely. And speaking of summer, I actually was talking to a parent the other day who said, this isn't verbatim, but let's just say the quote, it was, I already heard I'm bored about 17 times, and, it's only July. So, I think that actually sets the stage for what we're going to talk about today perfectly. I think that I'm bored, or that count is real. It's like the summer anthem. And honestly, I think that's exactly why we wanted to sit down and have this conversation here today, because I think summer, as awesome as it is, has a sneaky way of undoing a lot of the discipline and structure that our kids have built up during the school year. Amen to that. And that's, our topic for today is really the summer discipline. And I guess I would say why summertime challenges, the routine for kids and for parents too. And so this is I think a really a timely and important topic. And, why maintaining structure actually, I think, builds resilience and also character, and how we as parents and martial artists, can use these particular months as a secret weapon for growth. And we're going to share what I think and what we've seen actually work at TriStar, and some personal stories along with it, and some practical steps that you as a parent can start using today. So grab a cold drink, maybe a notebook if you're that kind of person, and let's dive into it. Because summer doesn't have to mean a discipline disaster. In fact, It might just be the most important season for building the kind of character that's going to last a lifetime. All right, Mr. Bean. So let's be real about all of this. When you think of summertime, what's the picture? To me, it's like, sleeping late, no homework, pool, vacation, a total break from routine. And, don't get me wrong, rest is essential. In fact, it's important. I mean, that's why we actually have scheduled breaks in our schedule for our students and their families. But here's the hard truth, and I want to put this on the table right now, is that summer breaks aren't, how do I want to say this? They aren't supposed to be the break in your kid's discipline, if you will. And I think that's such a crucial distinction there, because I think culturally we've been brought up to this idea that summer is a free-for-all, or like a reward for just surviving the school year. And if for whatever reason, if you don't give your kids the total unstructured freedom, that somehow you are, as a parent, robbing them of a quote unquote real childhood, whatever that actually means. But what we see over and over again at the studio is that kids who treat summer as 3 months of zero expectations, well, they struggle, and not just in September, but with their confidence. They struggle in as they get back into the school months as a challenge for them, right? They get restless, they get irritable, and honestly, they're a little lost. It's not, by the end of summer, they're a little lost, let alone by the time they get back into school, where that structure actually they have to pick up and start doing that stuff again. It's really tough for them. Yeah, the phrase that comes to mind, which it's a cliche now, and I don't like it, but I'm going to go ahead and say it, which is, everybody's saying now 100%. And if they're really dramatic, they say 1,000%, which is not even possible. But I agree with you. And I'd like to call it the summer discipline slide, if you will. And we know all about this really at the martial arts school because, look, academics during the summer, what do? They slide. Reading slides, math skills slide. But unless parents are doing something about it, which we're going to talk about that in a little bit, but their character also slides too when we don't have that structure. So self-discipline, focus, perseverance, these are actually all muscles. And if you stop exercising those muscles completely in June, July, and August, then they're going to atrophy, just like any other muscle would do.
And the hard part is kids, they're not going to tell you that, hey, mom, dad, I'm losing my discipline. They're just going to show you. And it shows up like more arguing about chores, more of hearing or listening to, I don't want to, or the more difficulty, the more difficulty in handling small disappointments. And, suddenly like the request to pick up their room, like, hey, go pick up your room. And you asking that feels like a major conflict and they're going off. Wow. Right. We know that. We feel that as parents. We've been in that situation before. And that's not a bad kid. That's a kid whose discipline muscle has been getting soft.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of, one of our students, and let's just, for this sake, let's just call him Ethan. Okay. But a great kid, awesome family, awesome focus during the school year. So what I mean by that, in class, focus, earning belts, showing real leadership all the time. But every time summer would hit, his family would take a total break from everything, including martial arts. And so you figure about 2-3 months later, he'd come back and there was a night and day difference between the kid that left and the kid that showed up. And I mean, so much so that he could barely stand still, pay attention. He, even forgot how to, hold that horse stance like he, once did because, well, there was atrophy. It hurt. And so therefore he didn't have the muscle structure to do what he had done prior to that. But more importantly, his ability to be able to hand corrections, that dropped. And sometimes, especially in the beginning, he would kind of tear up when you would push him a little bit harder and, ask him to do something again. His resilience just evaporated. And if you can think about this too, there's a correlation because why is it that our school system come, middle of August and September spends the next month and a half working on the things that they already learned the year before, if not 2 months, just to get them back up to speed now to work on the third grade material because they have to, refresh on the second grade material.
Yes. And as sad as that story is, it's all too common. We see this happen all the time. And it's not judgment on his parents. They just wanted him to rest. And maybe they wanted a little bit of a rest as well from that routine. But they just didn't realize that rest and growth are not necessarily opposites. They're not conflicting. You can rest from the academic pressure and still keep the character muscles toned. And I think that's what martial arts is so good at, right? That's where martial arts comes in with our tradition. We really never stop training as a martial artist. As long as you continue to be a martial artist, and being a martial artist means you have to be on the mat doing this stuff in a frequent way, then you just shift your focus, right? Summer could be a time to deepen your discipline and not ditch it.
Yeah. And so let's talk, if we could, why summertime challenges are routines, let's say so profoundly. And what I mean by that is when school is out, there's no external deadlines that kids have to follow, no teachers imposing any type of structure on, there's no bells in the schedule anymore, so there's basically if not implemented, there's no skeleton, if you will, for the day. And so many kids, I think, everything that was organized at one time now disappears. And it's not just, look, it's one thing to have more free time. I get that. But the problem is that it's a loss, or like, let's just say it's a loss of a sense of purpose that they once had in the structure that they had before, and now that sense of purpose and structure is gone.
And I think that's a massive opportunity that's hiding. It's hiding in plain sight, because when the external structure is gone, the only thing that's left to lean on is the internal structure. And a kid who's never built that internal discipline, who behaves because the system tells them to, they're going to flounder. But a kid who's been taught why we do what we do, who's practiced doing hard things even when no one is watching, that type of kid can thrive whether there's a routine or not, whether it's summer, winter, fall, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, really. And like, isn't that, I don't know if this reminds you of our mission at TriStar, but, one of the missions is that we're, building that internal compass. And we've talked about that on many different podcasts. So the question that we want to propose or answer today really is, how do we as parents and mentors actually use summer not as a discipline vacation, meaning that there is no discipline or structure, but let's call it a discipline dojo, a place where you can train that inner strength that you kind of just brought up, that makes the external rules less necessary.
I like that phrase, the discipline dojo. Let's break that down a little bit. What does that actually look like? Because I think parents sometimes they hear structure, and what they're thinking in their head is the militaristic style schedule. And I think they also picture the whole family being miserable trying to fulfill that type of militaristic schedule. And that's not at all what we're talking about here.
No, not at all. I mean, rigidity and structure, I think they're two different things. So rigidity breaks people, but structure, I believe, actually frees them. If you think about a train, in order for the train to go anywhere, it has to be on what?
Tracks.
The tracks. Now the train says, I want to be free. I don't want to be disciplined and structured on this track. So you take the train off the track. Is it free? Yes, but it can't go anywhere. It only is able to go somewhere when it's on the track and it has that, that disciplined structure to be able to follow. Now, the nice thing about the train is that when you get to a juncture, you can call ahead and say, hey, I want to go on this track now. But yet you're always moving from one structure to the next structure to the next structure. And, there should be flexibility daily, but there should also be structures, because I think that actually is what gives kids energy.
I think that's a perfect analogy. A summer without any of those tracks for the kids, the train to be on, can quickly become, a standstill, right? You're stuck. You lack the energy there for the kids, but also for the parents as well. And again, we felt the struggle trying to keep a kid on track when they're not engaged in a regular schedule. The day drifts, screen time inflates, bedtimes creep later and later, meals become less sit-down meals and more just grazing throughout the day, and parents get frustrated because the kid seems lazy or unmotivated, and we hear these things all the time, and really the kid just reflects the environment that they're in.
Absolutely. And here's something I've learned over the years is that fatigue makes cowards of us all. Let me say that again. Fatigue actually makes cowards of us all. But there's another kind of fatigue, and that's structure fatigue. So rather than the lack of structure, when a child doesn't know what's coming next, they actually live in a what do you want to call it, like a lower grade state of anxiety. I mean, it's not high anxiety, but there's just this. They don't know what's coming next. And the anxiety often then shows up in different forms. So it could be hyperactivity, defiancy. It could be whining, all of those things. But structure actually provides a sense of safety for them.
I remember a summer when my daughter was maybe 5 or 6. it was like the first weekend, we had no plan. It was just free time. We were just hanging out. By day 3, she was a puddle of emotions, all because she got the wrong color popsicle. My wife and I looked at each other and we thought, okay, we need a framework, something, we need to have some sort of structure with this. Otherwise this summer is going to be really tough for both of us. So we created a morning block. We had breakfast, we got dressed, we had 20 minutes of reading. We would have training time. We would go out and have fun. We would, she would necessarily do karate at that time, but she was, I would have her doing some kicks and practicing some karate moves just to be active outside a little bit. Nothing crazy, but the transformation that happened there was instant. She wasn't just better behaved. She was happier as well. She knew kind of what her job was. She accomplished something, and then the rest of the day felt like a reward.
Yeah, look, I totally agree that purpose actually precedes satisfaction. Let me say it again. Purpose actually precedes satisfaction. And so you gave her, in doing that and giving that structure, you gave her a purpose. And, look, if you think about it, we all like to go on vacation, right? But when we go on vacation, because we are creatures of habit, what do we have a tendency of doing? Let's say you're there for, let's say a 5-day vacation. What generally happens? You build a routine. And by the 5th day, everybody knows what the routine is. And now you're going to leave and go back and go back to your old routine. But in order to have, the satisfaction of that vacation, a routine, a structure has to be created. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think here's what a lot of parents miss is maintaining that structure during the summer isn't robbing the kids of a break. It's about protecting them from their own worst impulses, right? I think that is it paints that in a whole different picture. We then, and we all have them, right? Not just the kids, but we have them as well as adults. Without some sort of structure, we stay up too late, we eat junk food, we waste time on the phone. A kid's brain isn't fully developed. So the impulse control for the kids is even more challenging than it is for us adults. And the structure really is the gift that we can give the kids until their own internal discipline is strong enough for themselves.
Well, I remember, and I don't know if I want to use the full name on here, but we had an adult student. He was in our morning class when we had morning classes. He actually went all the way to 3rd degree. His wife and 2 kids were in the program. They went to 1st degree. And he would always say to his kids, look, you're going to use my brain until yours is fully functional, because he knew even back then that the brain is not fully developed until about age 25 anyhow. So to your point, our kids, even unbeknownst to them, need to use our brain until theirs are fully functional. So let's talk about that flexibility in structure and what it can kind of look like. So we and you kind of brought up a little bit with regards to your daughter, but we recommend creating a framework within which, spontaneity can actually occur. But, it's not replicating the school hours, of course, but it's about creating anchors inside of the day. So for example, you would want to create a morning anchor, a specific wake up time or thereabouts, that would be an anchor. Let's think about evening time, an evening time anchor as well. But let me go back to the morning. So, wake up time, make your bed, do some sort of physical activity or eat your breakfast, whatever it is. And then lunchtime, you want it to be almost consistent throughout the day. So I just throw it out. Let's just say it's 12 o'clock or thereabouts, but you want to have that, maybe a quiet hour where they can do some reading or work on some sort of creative project. And if you guys have not listened to our podcast that we did, I want to say it was February or March, but where we talked about creative ideas with AI, that'll give you some really creative ideas and creative projects. And then an evening anchor, you as a family, maybe you all do a devotional together, you have prayer time together, some sort of bedtime routine. Just make it consistent.
I think, I mean, listen, we're martial artists, so I got to do this, but I think the martial arts angle here is so natural. Many of our students have a class that they're going to, maybe two, hopefully, that they're going to through the week. And I think that becomes a huge anchor. It gives them an idea of, where the week is. Oh, it's Monday because I have karate tonight. Oh, it's a Wednesday, I have karate tonight. I think, again, that's a huge anchor. But the other days, what we encourage to do is to have that time at home. To use the term dojo again, we'll try it. We'll dojo at home, 5 to 10 minutes of practicing your form, your blocks, your punches, your kicks, even just sitting and thinking about what those moves look like. Sit and think about your form, right? And science backs this up. And they've done this study with people playing the piano, where they have people actually physically playing the piano. They see certain parts of their brain lights up. Then they have a whole nother group of people where they said, okay, just pretend, imagine, visualize yourself playing that piano. The same parts of the brain lights up. Now, listen, I'm not saying that you don't have to actually practice. You just have to think about it. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is you could challenge yourself to sit and just try to visualize yourself going through the form. That's a whole different challenge than it is to physically get up and do it. All to say is have some dojo at home and use that time to practice your stuff. I think that what that can do is that can remind the students that I'm a martial artist. Discipline is a part of who I am, even on vacation.
Yeah, and like for our own students, whatever month that we're in, using the I am statements even inside of that, because the identity of the individual, like you said, I'm a martial artist, and discipline is a part of who I am, even in the summer months or when I'm on vacation, is what you said. And so that identity is a huge piece. And if children see themselves as a disciplined person, then they're going to act accordingly. So I think summer is the best or perfect laboratory to test some of these things and see the strengths of that identity in your child, because the external pressure of school is off, and they can still do their practice, let's just say with martial arts and stuff, but or they could do reading, or they could do math facts, but they don't have someone there that's grading them or holding them accountable like that. And I think when you do that and you can test those strengths, you'll be able to see where they're at, and I think that will reveal real character for your child. Does that kind of make sense?
It does. And I know that I'll just kind of tee this up for you. At TriStar, we have a philosophy of discipline as a life tool, and we've kind of been talking around it for a little while. But can you bring us in and let's lead right into that?
Yeah. So, well, look, you said it. TriStar Martial Arts, we actually see firsthand how crucial that this continuous training for our students is. For their development, for the structure, for the family, structure as well, meaning that there is this constant in their life. And when things happen in our life, whether it is, bad things, good things, vacations, having a structure, having a constant that's always there. I mean, think about how many times over the years, we've had students and things have happened in their life. And we were the one structure that was still there. They lost a parent, or they lost a grandparent, or they even lost a sibling. And those are some horrible, horrible things that happened to them. And yet the consistency that was there over time, they could come to the studio and it was like home to them. And I think that, our approach in those type of things is very, very important. And it isn't just about the physical skills. Although we are teaching physical martial arts, we are helping your child become physically fit. There are more important things that are happening. It's really about fostering that disciplined muscle that can translate, I think, in all areas of your child's life. Not to mention, even we've had some parents that have commented over the years that have said that, they picked up on some of those things as well. And they weren't even in the program. They were just watching what was going on.
And hey, that reminds me of a story. I was talking to one of our black belt candidates the other day. She's 14. She told me that the biggest things that martial arts gave her wasn't necessarily the self-defense. It was the ability to do things even when she didn't feel like doing anything. She said that, after you've held a sidekick at the end of however long the workout was for that pretest, studying that history, that doesn't seem so hard anymore. That's easy, right? She translate to translate that type of hard work ethic outside of the martial arts school into real life is what she just did there. And I think that in order to bring that into summer, the lack of enforced demands is where the skill is either going to grow or shrink. And I think that that's often what we see in the summer.
Well, it was neat to hear that she, because of those physical activities or that specific physical activity, she was able to translate that in a way for her to go, I can do hard things. Mm. And that's a testimony right there. I mean, that aligns perfectly with our philosophy here at TriStar. We talk about building a disciplined mindset through, daily goals, planning ahead, and embracing discomfort. But in the studio, we kind of have a mantra, if you will, and so discipline is remembering what you want. Hmm. And I would say in summertime, it's kind of easy to forget that. It's kind of easy to forget what you want, whether it's earning your next belt, becoming more flexible, having even as us as parents, having a peaceful relationship, with our kids and kids with adults as well. So without a plan, what is that phrase you've heard before? If you don't plan, you plan to fail, or something like that.
That's it. Yes.
Yeah. So, without a plan, the immediate want is going to be screen time. Mm. The immediate want is going to be, I want to, sleep in more. The immediate want is, I don't want to go to karate because I want to stay here and play with my friends. And look, no kid is going to, leave instant gratification for delayed gratification. So here's what I mean by that. Your kid's out playing. It's time to them to get their karate stuff together and leave. And you say, hey, Johnny, you got to stop playing. We got to go to karate. Well, he's not going to want to give up instant gratification to go do delayed gratification, because that's what martial arts is, delayed gratification. But parents, let me give you a little tip here. All you do is you pick the worst thing that your kid hates doing. So let's just say it's cleaning their room. And you go out to Johnny and say, hey, Johnny, you only have 2 more minutes to play, and then you got to come inside and clean your room. And you do that about 10, 15 minutes before you need to leave for karate. Well, then Johnny comes in, he starts reluctantly cleaning his room, and then within 10, 15 minutes, whatever it is, you interrupt him saying, hey, Johnny, I need you to stop cleaning your room and get your karate stuff because it's time to go to karate. They're going to be happy that they don't have to clean their room. They're going to be happy that they're going to karate, because I've heard this over and over and over again. Yeah, they just want to have time with their friends. And well, yeah, no kid wants to get rid of instant gratification to have delayed gratification. They just don't. But there's your little tip, parents.
Well, I think that this talks about there's a deeper want there. And for a lot of kids, they actually feel, in order to feel competent, in order to feel trusted, to feel like they're growing, right? They need that deeper want. And no kid wants to be seen as lazy or unreliable, but without structure to demonstrate those positive traits, they default to a path of least resistance. They default, like you said, to that instant gratification. And at the studio, we provide a clear path. We have stripes, there's belts, there's leadership roles. The summer gives families a chance to create a home version of that path, not to replace the things that we do at the studio, but just to extend that influence.
Yeah, look, and let me give the listeners a practical use of our student creed here. One line of the student creed says, I develop self-discipline in order to bring out the best of myself and others. Let me say that again. I develop self-discipline in order to bring out the best of myself and others. So notice it doesn't say I will be disciplined. It doesn't say that. It doesn't say I will be disciplined when someone is watching me. self-discipline really is the crown jewel, if you will. So summertime is the ultimate test for self-discipline, because many kids, they're going to be drawn to the instant gratification things, like we all are. And so we have an opportunity to help them set this structure so that they can strengthen that self-discipline muscle even over the summer months, pushing them back into their own, traditional school, even better off than they were when they left in at the end of the school year.
Okay, so how do we get parents to become that sort of supporting person for their kids, right? Because I think that kids still need feedback, and this is where a simple family check-in can be game changers. It's something we've talked about in a number of podcasts before. We again suggest let's do a 3-minute discipline conversation. That sounds really tough, and it's going to be, listen, at dinner time, you could just ask, what is one thing you did today that required discipline? That's an open-ended question, so it's not going to be a yes or no answer, which is already great. And then on top of that, it gets them to think, okay, what did I do today that required discipline? And the beautiful thing about this is, if this is a reoccurring thing, if this happens all the time, every time you sit down and have dinner, then your kids will start to pre-think through the day, okay, what am I going to do today that's going to require discipline? Then I can talk about tonight at dinner.
Yes.
And that sets them up for success. Now, they're kind of pulling the strings a little bit, and you're maybe orchestrating a kind of behind the scenes a little bit, but that sets them up for success so well. And it could be something like making your bed, reading, reading when they wanted to watch TV. So doing something challenging instead of the easy thing. Practicing your form. You want to celebrate those things. Catch the kids being disciplined. And the beautiful thing about that is they're going to want to repeat that.
Yeah, behavior that's rewarded will be repeated. And then behavior that's recognized and rewarded will be even more repeated. Let me say that again. Behavior that's recognized and rewarded will be repeated. So that's the key that you brought up, is that we have to be looking for those things, recognizing them. And by having that open-ended question like you had brought up, that allows you to start to train yourself to recognize those things, but also you're teaching your child to recognize those things and calling them as they are. Does that kind of make sense?
It does. Yes, sir.
Yeah. And, look, this reminds me of a student, and I want to leave their name out, but he was struggling very much so with focus. And so, in the middle of the summer, his mom kind of had her end with it. And so there's more to the story than that. But, she came to me and she said, I'm thinking of actually pulling him out of karate because he won't even practice. And so I just asked, does he have a set time? And she said, no. So that to me kind of told me what was kind of going on. And so all we did was we just, sat down, worked together for about, a few minutes here to create a 10-minute morning, and what we called it a morning dojo, right after breakfast. And so there was an anchor there. Breakfast happened, and then this 10-minute time of training happened, and it was anchored and mashed together, and it wasn't optional. It's kind of like brushing teeth. It wasn't optional. In the first week, obviously, what did he do? He fought, just like any kid would do. The second week, he kind of begrudgingly did it. But I will tell you, by the end of summer, he was actually setting his alarm and then eating, his breakfast and then practicing it without even being told to do it. And one of the things I remember this specifically is because there was a spinning back kick that he was supposed to learn at that time, and he really desperately wanted to improve on that. So I will say that also helped, that he had a goal. It wasn't just get up and practice, but he really wanted to become better at that. And that shift actually became the structure that taught his brain that discipline is non-negotiable, but also that it's a part of his identity. And so the neat thing was that when school started, his teacher actually emailed his mom and, asked what had changed in him, and because he was a different student the following year.
That's amazing. And I think what that does is it highlights something that we believe so deeply, that discipline isn't something you have. It's something that you can practice. Like a roundhouse kick, you're never done. You just get a little better each day. Summer is the perfect time for that incremental growth because there's less pressure. And you're not studying for tests. It gives you an opportunity to study for life.
Yeah, and you brought up about, you never the like roundhouse kick. Now my roundhouse kick is different. I've had to learn as I'm older how to throw it a little bit differently than I did when I was younger. So it's better for me now. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, right. And as even myself, as I'm getting older, I realize that, man, it's so much, to use kicks, for example, it's so much different doing kicks in the air than it is kicking something. I would so much rather hit something with a kick to have that kind of feedback or that stop than force my body to do a strong kick and then force it to stop, because it's tough to do, especially again, as I'm getting older, I feel that as well. I'm sure that makes you feel happy.
Yeah, it does, because you used to laugh at me. And
now I'm there.
So, no, I mean, it was funny. I didn't feel bad at the time. Now I get to kind of chuckle and say the same thing, but anyways, our TriStar philosophy is, and this kind of pull it all together, I think, is that martial arts really is a vehicle for life mastery, and that's what we're trying to do. The kicks and punches, it's just a method, but the product is really the human being learning how to be able to set goals, make a plan, execute it, even when things are hard and boring, and that really, that in the summertime, that really gets tested. And that's what we want every family to understand, that now is the time to see where your kids are and help them with that test. We want every family to not just survive the summer, but to use it as a launching pad for a powerful new school year.
All right. So we've laid out our philosophy, the foundation. Yeah. Now I think it's time to get ultra practical. I like being ultra practical to give some actual tips here. If a parent's driving right now, listening, thinking, okay, I'm sold, but how do I actually do this Monday morning? Where do I even start for this?
Yeah, I love it. And you are practical. So first, choose an area that where you see the biggest room for improvement, and just make that one change. With James Clear and the Atomic Habit, one habit a day, or one habit, like just do it. And look, parents, if you haven't read that book, we've brought it up in multiple podcasts, but this could be a simple thing as just setting aside, let's say 30 minutes of daily reading, committing to a morning power hour, if you will, that includes physical activity and chores. But remember that we're building. The thing is that we're building a disciplined habit. We're not designing a boot camp, so be careful with that.
And as you go about this, and we talked about this a number of times as well, include the kids in the planning for this. This is huge, because if you just dictate their schedule, your point, you're going to do this, you're going to do this, they're going to resist it. But if you sit down and say, hey, listen, I want to make sure that we have a really awesome, amazing summer. And part of that means that we have to keep our brains and our bodies strong. Let's build our day together. Give them some choices within some boundaries. And do you want to do your practice for martial arts before or after lunch? And the way you phrase that, it sets them up to answer it, well, I'm going to do it before lunch or after lunch. It's not on the table at all. It's going to happen either before or after lunch, because you phrased the question like that. And again, that gives them ownership, and that ownership builds them as they buy into it. Then they're going to be more apt to actually go do those things.
Man, I love it. And let's also give a concrete example of a flexible but structured day. And so, this is a blueprint that we share with our TriStar families, and you'll see it's not about the minutes per se, but it's more about the blocks.
All right, so here's that simple framework. The morning anchor, maybe between 8 and 9:30, wake up, make your bed, do some personal hygiene, shower, bathe, whatever you're going to do, have family breakfast, and start the day with I'm ready. And then you move right into the power hour between 9:30 and 10:30. The discipline block. This includes 15 minutes of reading, maybe 15 minutes of writing. You practice your martial arts in there, any sort of physical activity, 15 minutes of home responsibility. That's a chore, mom and dad. That's a chore. Have the kids do chores. That's
non-negotiable.
It's a non-negotiable, right? Exactly. They got to do it. And then move into free play or creativity, right? Between, let's say, 10:30 and noon, unstructured play. Ideally, screen-free. Legos, drawing, going outside outside is great for this. Outside, if I can say it again, outside time, lunch, and then maybe some quiet time between noon and let's say 1:30. Consistent meal time. We talked about that. Have a consistent time to sit down and eat, followed by a time to do some, let's say maybe some puzzles, do some quiet reading, or have a mindfulness activity. Again, no screens. An afternoon adventure between 1:30 and 4:30. This is where the spontaneity that we talked about earlier lives. You can go to the pool, go to the park, run some errands. It's time to go do some shopping, right? Do a play date. If you have an opportunity, haven't already practiced your karate, do it there. And if you can, depending on how you structure that, maybe you can even fit that part into when the actual class time happens. That would be a wonderful way to do that as well. And then we're in evening time now, the wind down between 7 p.m. onward to whenever time you decide bedtime is. Pick a time, make it consistent and make that time. But you have family dinner, you have reflection, you have that discipline of the day. What's one thing that we did today or one thing that you did today that required discipline? Have that bedtime, that consistent time to wind down. Okay, we're in bedtime. We're going to read for a little bit and quiet time, bedtime.
Yeah, and look, it's not a prison sentence, right? That's freedom inside of framework. Let me say that again. That's freedom inside of framework. And again, that's the tracks for the train. And look, there's going to be plenty of room for surprises and also relaxation, but the bones are there. The martial arts practice, maybe in that, like you said, that power hour, that can be as simple as doing whatever requirements you have at that level, or it could be challenging yourself. I want to see how many punches I can do in 30 seconds, like whatever it is, or how many times I can do my form in a minute, but the key is that they do it mindfully, on purpose, right? Purposefully, and also consistently.
Now, what about that pushback? Because I think that even with the best plan, there's always going to be a kid who digs their heels in and say, I don't want to do my whatever. And how do we handle that?
Well, I would say first, empathy, right? Acknowledge the feeling. And we've talked about those things before. I hear you. I hear that you're not in the mood. But then remind them of the commitment. And I think this is an important tone too, but don't remind them about the commitment as a punishment, but as a part of, who they are. Look, I get it. We made a plan together, and part of, being a martial artist is doing the thing even when we don't feel like it. So even though the feelings aren't there, we still need to do it. So let's just give it 5 minutes. You can do anything in 5 minutes, right? And so often those 5 minutes sometimes turn into 10 minutes, maybe even 15 minutes, because the child gets into it, and the initial resistance passes, and and I think when that happens, then you can start seeing that discipline muscle start to actually become strengthened.
And parents, do it with them if they can.
Yeah.
Right. When my daughter was little, I'd do my own workout besides her when she practiced. She saw that discipline wasn't just the kid's obligation. It was a human value. It was something that we just did. even if you do stretches or push-ups alongside alongside the little one, alongside your kid, you are modeling that. And again, we talk about this all the time, but the kids are going to emulate that, right? That modeling is such a powerful teacher that we have.
Well, let them teach you what they're learning. You know, so and if you do that, that's going to make them feel good, because now they have the opportunity to be able to share the information with you, and then they feel in charge, or they feel like they are in charge as well. So decide on, one discipline anchor that you're going to implement. Write it down, talk about it with your kids, and then start it ASAP. Even tomorrow, if you can. You don't always have to wait until Monday. Because some people go, oh, well, we'll start it on Monday. But and once you do that's all it takes, and you can start to see the momentum start to shift.
Thanks for joining the TriStar podcast, where black belts begin at home. Connect with our community by visiting TriStarKarate.com. Follow us on social media and share this episode with a family who's ready to grow stronger together. Until next time, stay focused, stay faithful, and keep training like a champion.